All right. Welcome back to another episode of Web Development. Let's take a look at where we left off last time. All right. Um, we have been working on implementing or learning how to implement web development, web applications, right? So basically, you're implementing applications that happen to be using web technologies. And the first several modules focus on creating a user interface using technologies such as HTML and CSS, which mostly is just building static content, right? First with HTML, where we laid out the content, and CSS to make it look a little more prettier. But it was static. Other than that, maybe the implementing responsive applications where for various screen sizes, the application could adapt, either changing the number of columns or hiding and showing certain content, right? Other than that, it was just static content. It didn't change over time, right? It doesn't matter if users clicked or dragged or interacted with the application. It was always the same content. And and so we discussed in our last lecture we discussed that we're going to introduce JavaScript as the programming language of the web, right? That this would allow us to work with data structures, create functions, right? Interact with the user as capture events as the user interacted with the application, right? And so they would modify these data structures, and then the user interface would have to react, right? And display the changes that the user was generating. So we worked on through several exercises, several lab exercises that just to introduce some of the basics of the JavaScript language. Also, we discussed a little bit about the history, how's it evolved over time, and that they're being adding quite a few great features. Some of them that were weird that were not there from the beginning, but certainly much better of a development experience. Certainly has reached the maturity of more established languages, and then introduce some features that are pretty specific on what can we do for the web. So today we're going to continue. We're going to wrap up a few of the additional lab exercises, so that we introduce a couple more features in the context of web development, and then we're going to start taking a look at how we might use these skills of JavaScript to implement the Canvas application that we've been playing around for the last several modules. All right, so we'll introduce data structures, also users being able to interact, add content, remove content, edit content, right, and all in the demonstrating how React.js is able to we can use React.js to implement functions that can convert user interaction, data structures, algorithms. It can convert all that interaction, all that data, convert it into an equivalent user interface. Right. I mean, that's basically what React is. Right. It's a function that can transforms data into an equivalent user interface. Right. And you provide the algorithm to do that. Okay. So that's the plan for today's lecture. Again, we're still working through the third assignment, which will be due for another week or so. Also today, the another quiz will be available. Right, as always, you have a few days to complete the quiz. Since you're an online course, if you were a in-person class, then it would be at a particular date and time. So yeah, so that's the plan for today's lecture. Any questions?
Yes, Professor, I did have one question about quiz 3. It's no longer available. We cannot see it anymore. Is there any specific reason or um,
No. Yeah. So I'll make it available. If it's not past the due date, uh, But let me see. Let me take a look at it. Let's see. All right, so let's talk about React dynamic styling. And what we mean by this is that we would like to be able to use React, right? Be able to write functions or expressions, right? That can help us control how the screen looks like, right? That we would like to be able to apply styles and classes, right? And that paint the screen a particular color or background or font or sizing or whatnot, based on algorithms, right, that evaluate how a screen should be, right, should look like, right. So we can programmatically create algorithms that can compute whether something should be displayed one way or another. So first, let's take a look at using classes, right. We'd like to be able to compute classes that we might want to apply, right. Now we want to maybe create an expression that can evaluate perhaps to one of these various classes. Sorry about that. These might be classes that we have written ourselves, right, that we define them, or these might be classes that are defined by some library like Bootstrap or Tailwind or whatnot, right? They're very well defined, and we might want to programmatically choose that we want to display maybe something with this class or that other class, right, or red or blue or yellow, depending on some rule or some algorithm. So let's create in Lab 3. Let's create a CSS, right, that contains these class definitions, right? So let's take a look at our lab 3, right? These are all the exercises that we worked on so far, right? And so let's create a classes.css. So notice this is a CSS file. So we're going to have in here CSS content, and indeed we do, right? We have several classes that we're defining, right? Yellow, blue, red, green, black, and whatnot. Okay, and then we're going to import those classes. We're going to import them, and we're going to just apply them statically, right? We'll apply them statically, and and then we'll go through several examples where we can dynamically choose the class that we want. Right? But first, let's take a look at doing it static. Right? A static example first. So we have classes.tsx, right? Oops, dot. .tsx. And so in here, let's paste that. And notice that it's importing our classes CSS style sheet, right? So it's importing this here. And then in there, right, we are declaring a couple of divs or 3 divs that have some text in them that yellow background, blue background, and red background. And we're applying these classes, right? We want the background yellow, this blue, and this red, and the foreground to be black, and some padding. Okay. So let's bring that into the Lab 3 family of exercises. So this will be our classes, and let's navigate to the labs. Let's go to labs and Lab 3. Right. And in Lab 3 at the bottom, there it is. We have these classes, which is just these simple 3 divs where we have applied the background, yellow, blue, and red. So yellow, blue, and red. Okay. All right. So nothing new there, nothing earth-shattering. But the point of this exercise is to illustrate that the class name, right? That here, right now, we are applying the value to be a hard-coded string, right? Notice that we have these strings, right? That they can't change, right? Because they're being assigned to a literal string, right? But if instead we use an expression by using a curly bracket, we can use inside of that curly bracket an expression that must evaluate to a string, right? And this might be either a template string, like we illustrated in prior exercises, right? That can concatenate content or strings, right, and build a bigger string. And it can be dynamic, right? For instance, here we can insert a variable or a constant, and that constant can be, again, can be not non-changing, or this could be some computed string based on some complex algorithm, going out to a server, right, to make sure that you're logged in or something, right? And depending on the result of that complex algorithm, then we can apply a particular color. So, but we want to illustrate, right, that if you have here a constant blue, right, we can build the class on the fly, right? So for instance, let's add this div here, and notice that there's dynamic blue background. There it is, dynamic blue background. So it's dynamic in the sense that the class is being computed, right, at runtime, right, depending on the value of that color, right? So it's a simple example illustrating the principle. Right? So let's take a look at another one. Here, instead, we're driving the styling based on some Boolean expression, right, that it's dangerous. And so here we are illustrating the fact that we can have more complex logic, to create the class name. So for instance, here we start off with a curly bracket because it's an expression. It's a string that we're going to dynamically compute, not hard-coded like we have here. Right, so it's an expression where we have a template string, right, that allows us to embed a combination of static content. So this is static, right? It allows us to have these break these into two lines without having to use concatenation characters like a plus sign or anything like that, right? And it allows us to, again, embed an expression just like this one. This is an expression where the expression is trivial and it's just a constant, or it could be an expression that perhaps it's a ternary expression, right, that evaluates a predicate on whether the expression is true or false, right, and then the whole expression either evaluates to the one or another outcome depending on whether the predicate is true or false. So in this case, the predicate is true. That means that this whole expression, right, evaluates to a red border, right, and that's why we have here rendering with a red border. Or, right, if it would have been false, right, it would have been rendered instead with a green, right? There it is. Okay, let's leave it at let's. What did I do? Let me save that. Let's change this to true. Right, it goes back to a red dangerous. Okay, all right. And all right, so that's just to illustrate, right, that we can use these class name as expression as opposed to hard-coded strings. All right, so let's take a look at HTML styles. As we've discussed in prior examples, right, we can use the styles or style attribute, right, in React components, right, to style a particular element, right, and it takes the syntax of a JSON object, right. So, for instance, here we are defining several JSON values, right, or JSON objects, right, that have this one have a property of color and then the value string black, right. Here we have another padding 10x, right, 10 pixels. Then here we are using a spreader to combine several classes, several properties, several CSS property into one single object, background blue, that declares a background color plus a foreground color of black plus some padding that is declared earlier. So you can combine several styles into ever more complex styles, right? So for instance, here, background red is combining not only a background static value, but you're also combining right? Foreground color of black plus some padding. And once you have these JSON objects, you can apply them to the using the style attribute. Either apply the objects directly, right? Like these are the objects are declared over here, right? BG blue, BG red, or you can use this funky little syntax of where you have these double curly brackets, right? So the outer curly brackets, like this over here, right, are used to declare that this is not a string, right? It's not static. Instead, what is in here is an expression. So this whole thing needs to evaluate. Actually, it needs to evaluate to an object, right? Which indeed it is, right? These are all objects, right? These are all objects declarations, right? They are literal objects, right? Or you can have, right inside of the expression, you can declare the object right there and then inline. So either an object that has been declared, and here we are referencing it, or we are inline declaring the object right inside of the style tag. So and that's why you get this funky little syntax where you have two curly brackets. The outer one again is for the expression, and the inner one is because this is a JSON object. So let's create this just to illustrate. This is a styles component. So styles component, and let's first the first half over here, and then the second half. There we go. All right, so and then we can bring in import it in our lab3 screen. So this is styles, right? And there we go. So it's this one over here. Again, same as before, right? But instead of using classes, right, we are using the style attribute, right? So this first one, we are declaring the background color to be light yellow, foreground black, 10-inch padding, and then here we're then using these constant objects, right, that are built, in terms of each other. Oh my goodness. Am I getting sick? Okay, so this was just a few examples of being able to calculate, right, through algorithms and templates and expressions and objects, data structures, how we can use these algorithms to build the look and feel of an element, right? Either using classes where you have dynamic classes, or using the style attribute. Okay, all right. All right, so let's talk about parameterized components, meaning we want to be able to create components that can take arguments. Like for instance, it could be a component as simple as this that is an add component that can take two arguments, A and B, right? And then use those arguments to display some user interface, right? That is dynamic, that is different depending on the arguments that you pass. So for instance, this one simply displays a header of add, displays the value of A and B, right? And then displays the arithmetic addition of A and B, right? And you pass them in as arguments. Now notice the syntax here, that we are using curly brackets, right, as part of the parameter list. And that means that this is it's an object destructor operation, meaning that the add function here, the add functions, is expecting that we pass an object with attributes A and B, attributes or properties whose names are A and B. And then when we receive them, we're going to destruct the incoming object, and we're going to extract, the parameter, the object property A. We're going to assign it to a local constant A, right? And a property B in the incoming object is going to be destructed and is going to be assigned the value to a local constant b. Okay. So that's this is what it means, right? We are destructing whatever we're passing the object, right? And it's expected to be parameters a and b. Now, since this is a TypeScript, right? In addition here, we do need to have a declaration of the data type of the function, right? So here we have the function. This is parameter, but because of TypeScript, we have to add typing, right? Especially in functions, we have to say, well, we are expecting the structure of the object that is coming is that it'll be an object. That's what the curly bracket here means, right? We are expecting an object that has a property A and B, right? And that A and B are both numbers, number and number. Okay, so this is used for validation purposes, right? Making sure that when we do pass data to this function, right, that indeed is an object, and indeed it has these two properties, and they are of the correct data type. Now, once we are in the function, right, we can just treat a and b like we would any other variable, right, or constant. Here we just displaying that a is a, b is b, right, a break, and then displaying the arithmetic value, right. So let's illustrate this. Let's create an add component. Over here, let's see, we can create add.tsx, right? And let's copy this and let's paste that in there. Let's take a look at this, right? So again, we are receiving A and B as an object. We are destructing it, and then we are displaying these one after another. Let's create maybe a break here. Let's create maybe another break. And then another break to display that a plus b is equal to a plus b. Okay. So all right, so let's include this in our lab 3. So here we have add, and so okay, notice that it's broken, right? It says no, wait a minute, add is using this function, right? The function that we just created, this one right there, that function. That's what we are importing. There it is. So we are importing add. There it is. But it's expecting parameters a and b. Right, so that's why it's broken. It says you never passed me anything, right? So the way we pass now, this is a function, right? Meaning we should be able to pass things maybe as a parameter, but because we are using this HTML type syntax, the way we actually pass arguments is through the syntax of using attribute value. So you can say a, and then the attribute value, and say maybe 2, and then add b with a value of 3, right? Notice that now it's not complaining anymore, right? Because it is receiving, what happens here is that when this gets transpiled, this gets converted into an object of whose properties a and b with values 2 and 3. Right, so indeed, right, add will receive an object with properties a and b, right, with the values of 2 and 3. So again, this is it's a feature of React that attributes get converted into objects, right, with the values that are assigned. Here we're using expressions, right, that we are passing as value the value 2, the number 2, and the number 3, as opposed to passing a string or anything like that, right? And we see here that indeed it displays as the A, the B, right, and A plus B equals 5. So it works as expected, right? So this is a very common use of being able to parameterize attributes, right, that behave in a particular way. Well, we already saw an example of that when we played around with the to-do lists, right? That we were iterating over an array of to-dos, right? This one right here, right? And as we're iterating, each to-do was being passed as an argument down to the to-do item. Remember that? And the to-do item was receiving an attribute whose name was a to-do, right? That has this particular structure, right, of done, title, and status, right? And then inside we use it to render a to-do item. right? But we've seen that already. Although we're formally covering the feature, right, of being able to pass parameters down to a component. Okay. Now we can also pass data to a component in the form of a child, in the body of the um, elements, right? So here's an example where we are declaring a component square, right? And notice that in our illustration here we were passing data to a component where we're passing it through attributes, right? But components have attributes just like this one. Div has the attribute ID, has the attribute class name, and here we created a brand new component of ours, and we created the name of the properties ourselves, right? A and B. This one, our IDs and class names presumably are based on some HTML standard and whatnot. Okay, but not only through attributes can we pass data to div. Not only can we configure div through the properties here, we can also configure an element. We can configure it not only through passing attributes in here, but also in the body. See that? The content lab 3 is actually an argument, right? It's data that is being sent over to the H3 element, and then what it does is that it takes that text and it displays that text in a particular size, right? That's what the 3 means, right? So if you have H1, H2, H3, H4, right, the text, right, would be kind of like an argument or parameter that is being used by H3 to display that content in various sizes. Well, we can do the same thing. We can create our own content, our own component, right, and pass it data through the body. So here's an example. Here's an example, right? We're going to create a little square component, right, that takes as argument in the body instead of an attribute, right? It'll take it within the opening and closing tags, so that we can pass it to the property, to the component that we built, square, and presumably what it'll do is that it'll take that value and do something with it. Maybe square the value. So it'll come back. This whole thing should render maybe 4 times 4. So how do we do that? How is it? So here we've illustrated that if you pass attributes, right, to a component, the way you receive them is through these curly brackets as an object with properties that you get to name, right? The names you get to choose what the names of the properties you want, and then you have to adhere to you have to stick to those names of the properties. But what about here, right? Notice that we're not using any named property, right, or named attribute. Instead, that we have this body that is being consumed by the square and it does something. So how do we get a hold of it, right? So the way the square component, what it does is that it can receive as a parameter the children, right? Anything that is inside of the body is considered to be a child, right? So just like in this header, right, the JavaScript text is the child of the headers. Also, if you look at this div here, right, this content over here are the children, right, of this surrounding div. So in the same sense, right, we can take that 4 is the child of the square component. So you can grab that. You can get a hold of that. You can read what the body is, what the children are, right, by receiving as a property, as an attribute, as an argument parameter, right? Using the keyword children. So children is going to represent the data, whatever is in the body, and so once you have it, right, you can convert it, make sure that it's the correct data type or whatever. By default, it's just a string, right? Actually, no, it's a type of React node. It's a node, and here we are converting it we're casting it to a number data type, because what we're going to do is that we're going to compute the arithmetic square of that number. So so we're going to replace, right? We're going to replace this square 4. It's going to be replaced. This whole thing is going to be replaced by whatever this returns, right? So I'm returning a span, right? Whose inner value of the span is the square value of the number that we're reading from the child, okay, from the children, okay. So let me illustrate that. Let me bring in square. Let's declare it here in the lab3, and it'll contain this code. So again, we're expecting a child, which is a type of React node, and then we cast it to a number so that we can compute the arithmetic multiplication of those two, and then from within lab3, right? We can grab that, right? And then embed it in here. Let's see. Oops. There we go. And we need to import square. Import square. There we go. There we go. So notice that it comes back with 16. So it's square 4 is 16. And we can have several of these. We can have maybe another break here. We can say the square of 8. So then it's 64. See that? And you can even embed them and as part of an inline. So you can say, square of 4, right? 16. And here, square of 8 is square of 8. Make sense? All right. All right. So let's take a little more complex version of the same thing. Let's say we want to create a component that that formats the content, right? Maybe it highlights it, right? Maybe highlights it into some color, like yellow or something. Just like H3, right? What does H3 do? Right? It takes some text and then it formats it, giving it some font size, maybe font weight, right? A particular font or whatever, right? So it's an element, it's a tag that formats the child content, so that it looks a particular way. So let's do that ourselves. Let's create one that's called highlight, and like the name suggests, right, whatever text you give it is going to highlight it, right? It's going to change its background color. So how do we implement that? Well, here's the highlight, right? It's going to take whatever content you give it, right? And what it's going to do is that it's going to surround it with a span, right? And it's going to give it a style. It's going to change its background color to be yellow, and it's going to maybe change the foreground color to be red, and then all surrounding the children that the content that you gave it. So it could highlight not only just plain text, but really anything, right? Because it will surround whatever content you want to highlight. All right, so let's implement it. So let's see, highlight.tsx. Let's add it right here. There we go. And let's copy that, paste that in there. All right, so we have that. And now let's use it, right, in the lab3 to highlight this paragraph. Right, so let's go to lab3 here and maybe put it at the bottom. Let's save that. Oops, we need to import the highlight. Import. There we go. So there it is. So it's highlighted, and you can highlight anything you want. Maybe you can highlight this square of 4. I can do highlight, right, and then surround the square of 4. So notice that square of 4 is now highlighted. Right? So anything that you want to highlight, you can just surround with highlight, and then it applies that style wherever you want it. Make sense? All right. So another way that you can parameterize a component is by passing data as part of the URL, right? And so, for instance, we can use the use location hook, right, React hook, to be able to interact with the URL, right, that you have in a browser. So for instance, this URL, right? So we can encode data as part of the URL, so that based on that URL, right, we can read data in there, and so that the content will display one way or another based on what is in the URL, so that we can pass in parameters, right? We can read that and then customize the look and feel or the behavior of the user interface based on whatever we pass there as arguments, right? So one particular way which is useful is in the styling, for instance, these these links, right? The table of contents. So let's open up the table of contents. There it is. So right now the table of contents is just UL. We can change this to be style it as a pill, right? As bootstrap pills. So this would be nav, and then nav pills. Okay, so that converts it into inline like that, and then these we can add classes such as let me see, I don't remember, li on the hyperlink. Yeah, on the hyperlink would be nav link. Yeah, so nav link, so nav link like that, and then we can apply this to all of them. These would be all nav links, all nav links. Now, one of them should be highlighted. So for instance, since we are at lab 3, this should be highlighted. So link 3 should be active. So this would be active. All right, so notice that this gives us the extra information that's where we are, right? And ideally, as we click through this, right, we should be able to take a look at the. Let's go back to the labs. We can take a look at the this information up here, right, and then highlight the correct values, right? So we can use we can use a hook called use location that is part of the React router that is going to give us access to the URL, the location, right? The URL is the location of the screen that you're looking at, right? So let's import that. So we'll say use location. There we go. Right, and we are going to store it here in location equal. Right, and let's display the value of the location so that we can have an idea of what is it that it contains. Right. So first of all, let's create an outer container so we can display the location. Right. So let's display the location. Let's see. Let's use JSON stringify location so we can see what it looks like. Okay, there it is. So it looks what's inside of the location. I notice that it has a property path name, another one search, and then the hash, the state, and the key. All right, so those are all data that is in there. Maybe we can look at it a little easier to read. We can put it inside of a pre here, like that. Okay, and then maybe we can add some tabs here. So null and 2 or 4. So there it is. So that's what it contains: path name, search, hash, state, and key. So this is the object in location. And so, but here what we are pretty interested mostly is this right here. It's basically everything that is after the hash. See that? Right? Labs 3. And so we can extract the path name because it's the only part that we really care about, right? So we can extract that maybe using destruct, right? So we can destruct and extract the path name, and so we can display the path name over here. So let's do path name. Let's see what it looks like. There it is. So the path name is lab/3. Okay. So based on the value of path name, we could write logic over here, right, in these class names, and then apply active programmatically based on the logic, based on that path name, right? So what we could do here is that we can convert this into an expression, right? So that instead of being hard-coded strings, this could be like this, like that, right? So now we can embed some logic in here. So for instance, instead of this always being active, it should only be active, right? If the path name includes, right, the string lab3, right? So we can say, okay, does it include that? If so, then add the active, right? Or if not, then don't do anything. All right, there it is. So it worked. We didn't do anything. We didn't see any change. But let's copy this class name and let me illustrate it to other. But well, at least we should be able to see that if I go to lab2, notice that it doesn't highlight, right? Because now lab3 is not contained in here, right? But if I go back to lab3, it highlights. See that? Before it was always highlighted no matter where I went, okay? But now it only highlights when this has lab3. See that? So I can do the same technique and apply it to lab2. So let's paste the class name like that. And we'll say we'll only change this to lab2, right? So lab2 only will highlight, right, if this contains lab2. So click on that. There it is. See that? So it contains lab2 or lab3. I can highlight either one. And one more. Let's do one more. Let's copy that and let's put it here in lab1, right? And change this to lab1. Okay. And again now. Lab1 will highlight, lab2 and lab3. Obviously, if it goes to Canvas, there's nothing to highlight. Now, we can use the same technique to highlight these various tabs over here, right? So that if we sign in, right, and we go to the dashboard, we would highlight the dashboard. We would use the same kind of technique, right? We would take a look at the location, and based on that location, we would highlight, apply the various classes to one or the other, right, to change the background and foreground and whatnot. Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Now we don't need this path name, right? We don't need this pre. Let's remove that. That was only for for debugging purposes. Okay. Let's take a look at another example, right? Where we'll create another component like we did earlier that adds numbers, but this time around, right, it's going to try and grab the values from the URL, not from the not from the for as arguments, right, that are being passed around, right? So let's copy that and let's create a new component in here. Let's see that, and let's copy the content and let's paste that in there like that. Okay, so what it's doing here is that notice that we're using the same library as the earlier example. Right? The earlier example was using location, use location from React Router DOM, right? Use location. Use locations gives you access to the URL, a whole bunch of information about the URL. Well, there's another version of this, right, called use params, right? It's a little more sophisticated, right? And it's useful when you want to have more control over the structure of this URL, right? Where instead of using the string, right, you can break up the URL into pieces, right? And you can name each one of the paths. You can say that this is the first path element, the second path element, so on and so forth. You can name them. You can give them specific names, and then once you name them, you can ask, okay, well, the parameter that the path element that I called A, well, I want to know what the value is, right? And the path element that I called B, right? Well, I want to know what the value is, right? And so use params again, returns an object, and then you can destruct the object, right? And extract the pieces that you want. So let's take a look at this. So this is we're going to, so what we're going to do is that this path parameters component, right, is going to live inside a route, right? So meaning it will only render, if the path has the following structure, right? That it contains, it starts with add, right, and it ends with two values that don't have any particular value, right? Notice the colon. Colon means that I am naming this spot, this path, this path element over here. I'm calling it A, and this path element I'm calling it B, right? And they could be different values, right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to create a couple of hyperlinks, right? That are going to have, they're going to have the add, they're going to pattern match this, they're going to pattern match it. And then we're going to use different values for A and B. So if you click on this in this hyperlink, then we'll have add one and two. So A and B will be 1 and 2. If you click on this other one, right, it'll be add 3, 4. So that A will be 3 and B will be 4. And then the add parameter path add path parameter is going to be able to retrieve the values by name. So that in one case A will be 1 and B will be 2. In another case A will be 3 and B will be 4. Right? It'll display. We'll parse it into integers and calculate the arithmetic addition. Okay. All right, so let's copy this. This will be path parameters. Right, oops, copy. And so let's create it over here. And let's copy this here. And what we're doing is that we're creating these hyperlinks that when we click, they're going to the base URL as we are in lab 3, right? When we click on one or the other, it's just going to add to lab 3. It's going to add, add 1, 2, 3, or add 3, 4, 3 and 4. And so this only renders if the URL matches, right? Matches, and it looks like that. It looks like lab 3, add 1, 2, add 3, 4. If it doesn't match, it's not going to render. Okay, so this only the add path parameter only renders if it matches, right? But the hyperlinks don't. The hyperlinks always render, as part of the lab 3. Let's add this path parameters to lab 3 at the bottom. Right. So at the bottom of lab 3, we are going to add path parameters. Path parameters. There it is. We'll need to import it. Okay, so there it is. Notice that path parameters is indeed only rendering these two links. Right, let me make this a little smaller. It's rendering these two links. Let me add a little bit of space down below so that we can see. We can scroll a little bit. So notice that this is not rendering because the URL does not match. Right, the URL is if it had add at the end and then two values in the path, then right path parameters would render. Otherwise, it doesn't. So let's see. So when I click on this, if I hover, notice that it wants to go to /labs/lab3/add/1/2. So it's going to add here at the bed. It's going to concatenate here, add 1 and 2, and then it's going to pattern match. It's going to match this, and it's going to add path parameter is going to parse A and B like that. It's going to parse A and B, right, and it's going to print out the values of A and B. And then it's going to compute the arithmetic addition. So let's do that. Let's click on 1, 2. Boom, there it is. So add path parameter, and it's rendering 1 and 2, and then the addition of 1 and 2, which is 3. So it's parsing. Notice it's rather. So notice that it's add 1, 2, right? That matches this pattern, this path pattern. Right now it renders. This renders. Because it matches this, right? And so we're parsing the values of A and B, which is 1 and 2, and then we're calculating, right? We're displaying 1, we're displaying 2, and then the addition of A and B, right, parsed as integers. Okay. And if we click on 3, 4, right, notice that it parses the 3, parses the 4, right, and it computes the arithmetic addition. And I can go back and forth between the two, right? And then the up here, the URL is changing. So if I click on this, is add 1, 2. If I click on that, is add 3, 4. So yeah, so this is one way that screens or components can pass data, embedded as part of the path, right? This is going to be very important when we go to the canvas, right, and we navigate to the dashboard, right, and so when we click on the particular course, right, we're going to encode the ID of the course, right, as part of the path, and what the courses screen is going to do, or the module or the home screen, what's going to do is that it's going to parse that ID, and based on that ID, it'll know that it has to display the content for one course or another course, depending on the ID, right? So if I go to another one, it'll be a different ID, and it'll display a different content, different set of modules. Make sense? So that skill that we just practiced on will be very important, right, to be able to implement features such as different content from different IDs. Okay, all right. Right. So a word on debugging. So it's very important that you're aware that as you're working through your labs and implementing your web application, that you can inspect your inspector, right? I'm going to put it at the bottom, right? It's a full blown development tool, right? That and not only does it provide content for your static uh, um, uh, content, right? Your HTML, your CSS, right? But it also gives you access to source code, right? It gives you access to all your classes, all your functions, all your variables, right? All your constants, and you can step through the code, right? So if you let's see, where is it? Let me just Okay, here you have the file system is right there, right? And it gives you access to your file system. And you can take a look at the source code, right? So for instance, in this example, you add path parameters. It'll be available under the labs, under lab 3, add path parameters. You can click on that, and there it is, right? So this is the source code, right, that we are working on. And you can put breakpoints. So for instance, you can put a breakpoint. Why is it not letting me put a breakpoint? Oh, there it is. So there's a breakpoint there, or over here, for instance, so that if you refresh, right, it runs. Well, let's go to a lab actually. Let's go to a lab. Go to a lab. Let's go to lab 3, right? And let's click on this. So if I click on it, notice it runs. Right now, it's being evaluated, and you can hover right over the values of A and B. See that? So that you can make sure that if something is not behaving the way you wanted it, right, you can step through the code, right, and validate that it's behaving as you would expect, right? You can take a look at the variables. You can put breakpoints. You can put watch statements, right? So it's a full blown development environment. It's very, very important. Notice it has watches. It has all the local variables are declared, right? All you have a call stack, right? If you have different functions that you are calling each other and whatnot, right? So definitely, it's a very important tool that you need to be aware of and feel confident that you can use this tool to do full blown development. Okay, right. So definitely, take a look at this, right, and and practice its use, right. All right, let's take a very short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the how to use these techniques of using JavaScript, right, to implement some of the data-driven features of the Canvas application. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at how we can use JavaScript, right, to improve the implementation of the Canvas application that we have so far. All right, so let's see what we have so far. So we have in our Canvas index component, right, we have the entry point for our Canvas application. Right, so let's close this. Let's see. Let's close all these. There we go. Close all. There we go. And so if we go to the entry point of our Canvas application, it's right here, right? And oops, there we go. It's so big. And we can navigate to our Canvas application. There we go. And what we had done is that we have the left-hand side for the Canvas navigation right here. We have then the routes that are on the right-hand side that either display the account screens or the courses screen, dashboard, and whatnot, right? And we made the account be the default, right? And then the account itself has a default, which is a sign-in. And then once you sign in, we here it's going to the profile, or what we could do even better, right? What we can do is that when we sign in, right, and we click on sign in, right, instead of going to the profile, I think a better implementation might be that we go directly to the dashboard, right? So for instance, if we go back to sign in, and we click on sign in, right, we go to the dashboard, which is the actual implementation when you go to Canvas, right? When you go to Canvas and you sign in or log in, if it knows who you are, excuse me, if it knows who you are, right, it'll go to your dashboard. Otherwise, it'll challenge you with username and password, right? And once you sign in successfully, boom, it navigates you to your dashboard. And then you can, if you want, you can go to your profile over here, right? Once you are in the application. So let's try and follow that type of implementation. So now that's what we have so far, right? So we go to account, we sign in, we click on sign in, it takes you to here. Okay. Um, Now also, if we click on an account, notice that it's going to sign in, um, and um, and 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 that's fine, right? It takes us over here. What we could do is that by default, right? If we go from the labs and we click on the canvas, by default it should take us to sign in, but right on the account, it'd be nice if we click on the account, it would automatically take us to the profile. That would be nice, right? And I think we have that implementation somewhere. We probably did it on in an earlier assignment. Let's see, probably assignment 2. So you can take a look at that implementation from there. In the account, when we click on the account, we would want to go directly to the profile, right? Just otherwise there would be no way to go to the profile, right? So it'd be nice if we click on the account. By default, it'll take us to the profile. All right, and eventually we'll have folks being actually signed in and logged in, and then we will be able to decide, whether you can go one way or another. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at implementing adding some data-driven features to the Canvas application. So in particular, if we look at the Canvas navigation, this Canvas navigation that we have here on the left side, um, right now is just lots of hard-coded links, right? So we go to the Canvas navigation. The current implementation is that we have lots of just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste of a whole bunch of links, right? And also the highlight is not working, right? So it doesn't highlight where in that particular when you click on one of these. So let's improve this. What we could do instead of copy and pasting over and over, whenever you see that as a developer, immediately you should have a red flag should come up and say, can I improve this, right? Instead of just copying and pasting over and over, could I instead create a data structure that grab that has just enough information, right, of the things that are different. Like for instance, what's different here? Well, the difference is that the text is different, the icons is different, right? The two attributes are different, right? And so let's capture the things that are different. Create a data structure, maybe an array of links that then we can use and iterate over that array, and then display, create these links on the fly based on that new array. So let's take a look at that. So what we could do is that we can create an array of links, right, that captures all that information that is different, right? So there it is. So we have a link with the labels of dashboard, courses, calendars, inbox, labs, right? Then we have the path. So we're creating an array of objects that capture all the things that are different. The path is different, right? And also the icons. So these are the objects, right? The that are references of the icons in there. They're the ones that we're using here, right? IO speedometer and Leah book solid. So all those are here, right? The icons. And so what we could do is that now we can just iterate over the links, right, and create as many links as there are objects in the array. Also, what we want to be able to do is that based on the path name, if it includes the label, the dashboard, like this one, for instance, right? If we click on inbox, right, notice that the text includes inbox and the same thing as the label here. If we click on calendar, notice there's this calendar there, and there's also the text that we're displaying here. Same thing for dashboard, dashboard, dashboard. So if it contains the label, right? So notice the label. If it's as part of the URL, right? Then we should be able to highlight that particular hyperlink, right? So we're going to encode that logic in here, right? That if the path name, right, we're going to grab the path name from the location like we did earlier, right? And if the path name includes the label, then we can decide to highlight, right? The background, make it white, the foreground, make it red, right? Otherwise, just change it the background to be black, right, and the foreground to be white. Okay. So yeah, let's do that. Let's grab the path name from the location. Let's see, location. We'll need to import this. So import. There it is, location. And then we can create an iteration. So we can do. Let's see, maybe the account might be slightly different because the styling of the account is slightly different. Notice that all the other hyperlinks are according to the implementation here, right? Notice that the icon is white and all the other icons are red. See that? So maybe it's slightly different styling, so that's why we can treat it slightly differently. So here, what we'll do is that we'll leave the hyperlink for Northeastern alone, right? That's static, that doesn't change. But the account link, we can treat it differently because it has slightly different styling, right? There's no point in adding it to the uh, data structure, right? Because it's slightly different from all the other links. So let's copy that and let's add it here. Let's see, let's add it over here like that. Right, so that would be, let's make that a little smaller. Okay, there it is. So there's a count, right? If we click on the account, notice that it highlights. If I go somewhere else, right, it doesn't highlight, right? So it works. That works, right? So if it has the account, it highlights. If not, and notice also that the background, right, the color of the icon is white as opposed to all the other ones being red. And then all the other ones is just iterating over the items in the array. And let's put that here at the bottom. There they are, right? So notice that we have now the account, right, the dashboard, the calendar, the inbox, right? They highlight as I click on it. It highlights, based on the content of the URL, based on the label. Okay. And the way that works is that as I'm iterating over the links, right, I'm adding the path to the two, right. Also, I'm using the path to know whether the label is contained in the path, right, to highlight or not. And the label is down at the bottom, right, and then it uses the icon, right, it uses the icon as a function, right. It uses, so these are actually functions, just like Canvas navigation is a function, and I can use it in using its HTML tag syntax, but it can also be used just like a regular function. So these icons, right, they can be used as regular functions like that, and invoking them and passing as arguments any attributes that you might want to configure. So here we're configuring the class name to be a particular size and a particular color. Okay. Other things to point out is that notice that we have a key attribute that is needed when you are generating several elements inside of a loop. Okay, and so it's required that you provide a unique identifier, not an ID, right? Not using the attribute ID, but using the key attribute. But the values need to be unique, right? And so it could be anything. It could be an index, right? Here I'm using the path because I know that the paths are unique, right? Maybe not. Maybe I should use the label because there are two paths that have the same value. So maybe a better solution for this might be the label. That's unique. Okay. So once I do that, really all the hard-coded links that I had before, I don't really need them anymore, right? So I can just remove those. Okay, they're gone, right? So I remove all those. Oh, it looks like dashboard appears twice. Oh man, appears twice. Link, accounts, courses, oh, dashboard, courses. Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry. uh, I had to a refresh. All right, anyway, so if I click on sign in, right, navigates to dashboard, it properly highlights it. Now notice that when I click on the course, right, it highlights the course, right? But notice that if I click on the course, you might say, well, where should it go? Right? So what I did is that if I click on the course, it navigates to the dashboard. So that's why the courses, I made the path be dashboard, so that if you click on the course, it navigates to the dashboard. Now, if you navigate to a course from the dashboard, it highlights the fact that we are in a particular course. Okay, make sense? All right. Now we can certainly do the same thing for the course navigation, right? Where these also could be an array of objects, right, that you can iterate over and implement it that way. Okay, and I encourage you to also implement that as well. All right, so let's talk about a pseudo database, right? We want to be able to represent all the data that we are displaying here as part of some data structure, right? So for instance, if I have a dashboard. The dashboard should be displaying these courses from some data set, right? In particular, perhaps it could be an array that contains all sorts of courses that that we can iterate over and display, right? Because right now the dashboard is just consists of a lot of hard coded content, right, that we have copied and pasted over and over. And again, that should immediately raise some flags, right? That we should be able to automate this, have some data set that we can iterate over, right? And instead of making, just copying and pasting. I have provided for you a set of sample data that you're welcome to use. You can modify to customize a little bit if you want. Now, I'm calling this a database, but it's not really a database, obviously, right? What this is going to be is just going to be a a, uh, a component that is going to contain several JSON files, right? That I'm going to give you, and then I'm going to call it a database, right? It's just going to be a data structure that we can query, right? And we can iterate over later on. In the second half of the semester, we will have a proper database, right? We're going to be using MongoDB, right, to host all this data, and we're going to move all this data, all this JSON data, we're going to move it over to an actual database. But for now, right, it'll be just a file, right? So let's create this file. Well, not yet, actually. Let's download the sample data set that I'm giving you. So in GitHub, I'm giving you this JSON file, right, that contains all sorts of courses, right? So I'm going to download. I'm going to see the raw data. I'm going to save it, right? And I'm going to save it, Janunzi, NEU. We'll go to 2024. We'll go to fall. Then here, then to the React, and we'll go to source. We'll go to Canvas. We'll create a folder here. It'll be database, right? And I'm going to save it as courses. It'll be courses.json. Okay, there we go. Let's confirm that it's there. There it is, courses.json, and that's the data that we're giving you. We're giving you the name of the courses, numbers, the start date, department, credit, blah, blah, blah. All right, oops. Right. And so what we're going to do is that I'm going to give you several files that represent courses, modules, students, enrollments, grades, assignments. So we're going to put all the JSON files in here, and then we're going to collect all the data into a single TypeScript file, right? So we're going to have index.ts, and notice that it's TS because it only contains TypeScript. It's not going to contain any HTML or any formatting, right? No user interface, just data, right? So a proper extension is to have it at TypeScript, not TSX, because there's no user interface content in there, right? So anyway, so that data, to grab the courses that we just saved, right? And we're going to create a map, right? So this is a map. It's an object that has properties whose name are the same as the files that we are importing. So this is a shorthand for saying courses, right? But we don't need to do that. We can just say courses, and it's exporting it so that we can import it in other files whenever we need the array of courses, right? So again, courses is just an array of objects, and whenever we need, we can import the database, right, and extract the specific part of the data that we need, right? So once we have that, once we have the quote unquote database that contains our courses, we can revisit the implementation of our dashboard, right? So now our dashboard can import the database, right? Extract the courses from that database, and now instead of copying and pasting the courses, right, we can iterate over the array of courses and display the content dynamically. Right, so let's do that. So in our dashboard, right, instead of having these hard-coded courses, we can import the database. You can say, import the database, from database. Oh, okay. No, we're using the other import syntax. Everything in there, and then we're going to extract the courses from inside the database, and we could use the destruct syntax for this instead, if you prefer. Once we have that, we can now, instead of having this be hard coded to be 12, this can now be an expression, because it's going to say, courses, and then the length, to see how many courses there are. And there's 21 courses. There it is. See that? And we can also now iterate over the courses. I guess we can just copy this. Let's copy this like that. So this is that, like that. That's in the row. So that's the row here, like that, right? So it's this. We can just remove that and then just paste that. There we go. Okay, so notice that what we have here now is all the various courses that I'm giving you. One is, oops, sorry, let's go back. We have rocket propulsion, aerodynamics, spacecraft, physical chemistry, inorganic chemistry, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of other courses that I just made up. Now, feel free to replace this with courses of your own. Also, feel free to use different images. I use the same image for all of them, but you can make it so that it uses a separate image for each course. So notice, let's revisit this implementation. Notice that we're iterating over the courses, right? The array of courses. And for each course, right, we are returning. Notice that this is an implied return. So this is creating a new array divs, right, that are going to be concatenated all together to implement this this grid, right? So this is the same HTML that was there already, and so that creates the grid of cards, and each card is a hyperlink, right? So that they're all clickable. Notice that if I hover over them, they're all clickable. Anywhere I click, it's clickable, right? And where does it navigate? So notice that it navigates to Canvas courses, and then notice here it's the ID of the course. See that? And then the home. So it used to be, that it navigated to Canvas courses 1, 2, 3, 4 / home, but now, right, it'll be a different ID. So notice that that if I click on this one, notice that it's courses RS 101 home, right? If I go back and I click on this one, it's courses RS 102 home. See that? So each one is a different ID, is encoded in the URL. It's encoded in the URL, which could then be used here in the courses screen. We could parse that ID and grab the appropriate content here. Now we don't have that right now, right? The home component right now always renders the same content, but we can certainly, right, import the database again and then look up the actual course that we want to display, right? And we'll do that in a minute. Okay, so in the dashboard now, this is dynamic. Other things here is that instead of the names being hard-coded, right, now it's course.name, right? And instead of being the descriptions hard-coded, now it's course.description. Okay, everybody good? All right. All right, so we have this dashboard that when you click on it, it highlights it encodes the URL, in the URL, the ID of the course. Let's see if we can take the course screen, right, and parse this and look up, for instance, the correct course name, so that we can display here the correct name of the course. Right, so let's take a look at that. So in the courses screen, right, we can do something similar that we did earlier. We can import the database and extract the individual item of, in this case, the array of courses, right? So in the courses screen, so go to courses. In here, we can, again, we can import the courses, and and what we can do is that if you notice, when we created the routes that allows us to navigate here. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. If we go back to the implementation of the canvas, the entry of the canvas here, notice that when we navigate to courses, courses is displayed when the courses element is displayed if the URL looks like that, right? So if I click on courses, this is displayed. The courses is displayed if the URL looks like Canvas, which is that's how we got here, right? Followed by courses, there it is, followed by courses, right? Followed by something, the course. Notice that here we are giving a name to that position in the path. See that? Followed by anything, followed by whatever. So we don't know what that is, right? So that this star is being delegated to the courses. The course is going to deal with this either being home or modules or assignments, right? And it'll further decide to either display the appropriate screen, right, based on the parsing of that part in the path, right? So that part is handled by the courses screen, to decide what to show here, right? But in here, we are naming that placeholder right there, RS101. And the name that we're giving it is the CID. It's a path parameter. And so just like we showed you in the lab exercise earlier, right, we can take a look at that path parameter by its name. So in the courses, we can use the use params, right, in the React router. So we can import that from the React router. So we can say use params, and then we can extract that path parameter that we named CID, right? So what use param does is that it comes back with an object, right? Actually, let me illustrate that. Let's comment that out for a second. We do const parameters use params, right? And let me show you what's in there. Let's see. Let's show it right below the courses here. We can say, JSON, stringify parameters. There it is. See that? It's an object. It's an object. We can see it a little better. Maybe we'll add it inside of a heading so that you can see a little bigger. There it is. So it's an object, okay? So the star, right, that star is what we named here. See that? This star. What is that star? So it's everything that follows the courses CID star. What is star? It's home. Star is the home, right? And then this placeholder of CID, right? It's this right here. It's that placeholder. It's RS101, right? So we can extract the CID out of the parameters, right? We can use this here like that. This notation. Now we have the CID, and we can display the CID over here. We can display the CID. So what is the CID? It's RS101. It's this value. So we can use the CID, right, to look at the courses and find that particular course for that particular course ID, right? So for instance, what we could do is that given the courses array, look up for each course, find the course whose ID is equal to the CID that we just parsed from the parameters, right? Once we have the course, we can, for instance, display if there is a course, right, we can use that, whether this exists or not, we can use it to display the course name, right? So let's do that. Let's find the course, right? So let's find the course. There it is. And let's render it. We can say let's create another one here. We can create JSON.stringify the course. There it is. There's the big course object. Maybe we can put it inside of a pre here like that, and maybe we can say null and 3. There it is. There's the object that has the the name of the course, the number, the start date, right? We found it, right, based on the RS101. So the RS101, that's the name of the course. Now, if I go back to dashboard and I click on this other course, it'll be a different ID, RS102. So it's this one. It's a different name. See that? Aerodynamics. So that means that I can now use the course, right? We can use the course to display the name of the course. We can say instead of hard coding it to be course 10123, I can say that it's the course dot and then the name of the course, right? And it's course name. So save that. Right. So it's complaining, saying that hey, the course might be null, right? And it might not be. It might be undefined. So a common technique is to prepend something that might be null with a Boolean operator that checks to see if the left-hand side is something other than undefined, right? If it's something other than undefined, this evaluates to true, right? And so it evaluates the right-hand side, right? So if this is undefined, null, empty string, whatever, right? This will evaluate to false, right? And it won't render the right-hand side. So it's a nice little technique for guarding, making sure that the right hand side is not evaluated unless the object is defined. So if I save that, notice that now it says that's aerodynamics. See that? If I go to course, if I click on this, it says spacecraft design. If I click on this one, it says organic chemistry. See that? So yeah, so now we've shown you that we can render content that is dynamic based on the parameters that we encode as part of the path, right? I had some styling here. I'm going to use, instead of just plain old H2, right? We're going to use a little bit of styling. There we go. And we'll need to import that icon. Let's import the icon, I guess from here, maybe. There it is. Right? And let's remove this. If this was only for debugging purposes, let's remove that. There it is. So organic chemistry. If I click on this, it'll be rocket propulsion, right? If I click on that, it'll be aerodynamics. Okay. All right. Okay. So this one's asking you to use some of what we've just did, right? Of implementing the canvas navigation to use the same technique, right? But on your own, implement this course navigation using the same techniques that we just used for the canvas navigation. Using an array of labels, right, for home, modules, piazza, zoom, blah 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 blah, so that you're going to iterate over this, so that you will render that dynamically, right? And it should highlight, right, as I click, right, it should highlight. All right. Um. So 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 one of the issues. Notice that this went away, right? The course name went away. And the reason it went away is that, right, when you go through here and click here, notice the ID is encoded. But if I start clicking around in the course navigator, right, the ID that is encoded, these are hard coded, right? This is, I haven't implemented this part. I've not implemented this part. You would implement it, but you should make sure that the links that are generated have the ID of the course embedded, right, encoded in here. Because notice if I click on modules, notice that it's using some bogus ID for the course. Obviously, the filter doesn't find the course, right? It doesn't find the course, and so it's blank, right? So if I click on modules or Piazza, whatnot, right, it can't find it because they're all hard coded to some bogus ID. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to fix that. I'm going to go to the course navigator. I'm not going to implement the whole thing for you, but at least I'm going to fix that part, right? So I'm going to go to course navigation, like that, right? So notice that we have hard coded the ID of the course. I'm going to grab the course ID just like we did, to render this up here, right? Same thing. We're going to grab the use params, so it's use params, right? And then we're going to grab the course ID. So cons course ID. There we go. And then just to make sure that we have the course ID, let's render it. CID. There it is, RS101. We do have it, right? So if I go to a different dashboard, there is RS102. So I do have it, the course ID. So now that I know that I have it, I'm going to make sure that the URLs have the course ID embedded in there, right? So let's change all these to expressions. So this will be backtick, right? So that here I can embed the course ID. There we go. See that? So that's for home. And I'm going to do the same thing, right? I'm going to do the same thing for the modules. I'm going to paste that in there. I'm just going to copy that into modules, and I'm just going to remove that, right? I'm just going to do the same thing, copy. And I'll do that for Piazza, right? I'll copy Piazza in there. There we go. And I'll just keep going this all down through each one. So zoom, okay? And let's do it for assignments. That. You can do quizzes. I'm just going to do it for people. There we go. So now, right, as I click on this, notice that the ID is always there. See that? If I click on modules, it doesn't break. It doesn't break, right? Because I have the ID and it finds the ID and it can display the correct name of the course, the people as well. It works. Okay. I didn't put the highlight. I'll let you do that, right? The breadcrumb is it's asking you to implement the breadcrumb so that as you click on the various hyperlinks, right, it encodes the name of whatever you clicked on. This is kind of like an extension of implementing the course navigation. So I'll let you do that. Let's see the data-driven module screen, right? So the module screen, I am also giving you data for modules. So I'm giving you data for the courses. I'm also giving you data for the modules, so that depending on which course you go to, right? If I go to the rocket propulsions, I would like to see modules for the rocket propulsion. If I go to the aerodynamics, then I would like to see modules for aerodynamics, right? So here I'm giving you some sample data for some modules, only for 3 courses, right? And not required to have data for all your courses, right? Only the ones that I'm giving you here, but feel free to create your own data set. Okay, so let's look at so this is data. It's an array of modules. I have 9 modules, 3 for RS101, 3 for RS102, and 3 for RS103. Okay, so here's each module. So there we go. So we have 9. So the first one is for M101. This is M102, and then M103. And each module has its own unique identifier, but it also has a kind of like a foreign key telling it, what course does this module belong to, right? So for instance, this module is for course RS101. The second one is also for RS101. So the first 3 are for RS101. Then the next 3 are for RS102, 102, 102, right? And the next 3 are for RS103, 103, and 103, right? So that if you navigate to the first 3 courses, right, each one will have at least 3 modules. Now, for the first course, right, modules, not only do I have modules, but each module also has embedded an array of lessons, right? So the first module has 3 lessons. The second module has the 3 lessons. I didn't provide lessons for all the other modules for different courses. It's not, I'm not requiring you to have lessons. I mean, if you feel like adding lessons, go ahead, but it's not required, right? I only added lessons for the first 3 modules, right, for the first course, okay? So what we're going to do is that we're going to iterate over these modules for each one of the courses. We're going to, depending on CID, we'll filter out, what are the modules for that particular course, and we'll iterate over those modules. And then once we, for each module, we'll then iterate over the lessons, right, and display each lesson under each module. Okay, all right, so let's save this, and I'm going to save it in the same place, and I'm going to call it modules.json. Okay. All right, so let's make sure that it's there. Let's see, in the database, there it is, modules. Let's make sure we import that. All right, so let's import the module. So import modules from modules, perfect. And we'll say we'll add modules to this, right? And so you'll be doing the same thing for other data types, like assignments, quizzes, people, all that, okay? Right, so if you want to use your own images, excuse me, you want to add images for different courses, like if we go to sign in and you come to here, instead, what you could do is that you can create images for each one of the course and give the name for the images. Use maybe the ID of the course so that you'll have an image called rs101.jpg, right? And you'll have rs102 JPEG, so that when you're iterating over the courses, you have the IDs, and so you can show the correct image, right, for each one of the courses. So that's a technique you can use, right, so that your images know for what course they go to. Okay. All right. So all right. So we have the modules in there. What we can do now, right? What we can do is that in the modules, right? We can parse what course are we in, and then based on the course, we can also grab the modules from the database, and then make sure that we're only gonna work with modules for that particular course. So we're gonna filter out and say, hey, I'm not gonna. I don't want to render all modules. I only want to render the modules whose course is equal to the CID in the parameters, right? So that filters out. Right, so this statement right here filters out, right, all the other modules, only keeps the modules for that particular course, right? And so once we have those modules, then we can iterate over those modules. Notice that these are linked, right? They're concatenated one after another, where this map maps over the filtered modules, right? And then what it does is that iterates over that, and displays each one of the modules. The modules names that are now dynamic, right? They're not hard coded, right? And then if there are lessons, then it iterates over the lessons as well, right? All right, so let's take a look at that. Or let's open up the modules implementation, and we'll bring in the use params. Use params. We'll grab the ID, the database as well. There we go. We'll grab the ID of the course and all the modules. We'll have all the modules, and what we'll do is that this line item, over here is the module, right? That renders the module, right? So we'll create an array out of this. So this is the line item right there, right? We're going to wrap that in. We'll say wrap. Okay. This is going to be the output, right? Going to be the output of a function that is going to return this. It's going to return this from mapping the modules, right? The modules. Let's see, and this is like that, right? So this is going to be module. This is modules. Going to iterate over the modules, and as I iterate over the modules, let's see. What am I? What's the syntax here? What am I missing? Li. Oh, this has to be an expression. Play bracket like that. There we go. All right, there we go. So notice that it's iterating over all the modules, right? And it's just copying and pasting 9 times all the lessons, right? And once we have the module, though, instead of hard coding the name of the module here, right, we can say, module dot, I don't know, name, is it? name. There it is. So notice that we have introduction to rocket propulsion, fuel and combustion, nozzle. So notice that we have all 9 modules here, all of them, right? But we don't want all the modules. We only want the modules for the particular course. So let's filter this out, right? We're going to say, so we're going to filter, and so that, for the module, I only want the modules where the module course, right, is equal to the course ID, right? So notice that it wheels down this to just 3 modules. See that? Only the ones for rocket propulsion, right? Fuel, nozzle, blah, 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 blah. And the week 2, this down here is just a hard-coded version up here. Down here, we can just get rid of it. It's outside of the URL of the loop, sorry, the loop. Let's do that, remove that. Okay. Also a good practice, right? Whenever you are iterating over something, you should always add the key attribute, right? And it should be given a unique identifier. And we can use the ID of the module. So module dot underscore ID, right? So that's a unique identifier. Perfect. Okay. Now the lessons is also hard coded over here. So instead of just having these 2 hard-coded things, we can just again do the same thing. We can wrap this as an expression, which is going to be the result of a function evaluation of some lesson, right? That of us iterating over the lessons. We're mapping over the lessons, and this will be the module.lessons, if there are any lessons, right? And this would be the expression. This would be an expression like that, right? Now, module lessons, there might be no module lessons, so we should put in front of this a guard saying that if there are any lessons, right? If this evaluates to something that is not empty, not null, right? Not 0, not it's defined, right? Then right, evaluate the loop through it. Okay, and there we go. So there we go. We have the lessons. Okay, and right now it's hard coded to be just lesson 1. But this could be the lesson name. So lesson and then the name of the lesson. Okay, there we go. So we have history of rocketry, rocket propulsion, rocket engine types, right? And so all the various lessons in there. And then we have a hard-coded one that we can get rid of. Like that, right? There we go. So we have modules, right? And then the lessons for those modules. Now, if I go to a different dashboard, if you go to a different course like aerodynamics, you'll have a different set of modules, right? So this is the fundamentals of aerodynamics, supersonic, right, aerodynamic, blah, blah, blah. But if I go to spacecraft design, it'll have different modules, right, for that particular course, based on the course ID. Okay, does that make sense? Now, on your own, right, you're expected to take as the data here, the sample data that I'm giving you, that has all sorts of assignments for various courses. So for instance, here are 3 assignments for course RS-101. You have 3 assignments for RS-102, right? And you have 3 assignments for RS-103. So that the intent is that, if you navigate to the assignments for RS-103, you would display here the assignments for RS-103. But if you go to RS-101 and you go to assignments, then you would display the assignments for RS-101. Okay, and you're only required to show assignments for the ones that we give you, right? If there are no assignments for other courses, then that's fine. It's okay for this to be empty, right? Just say maybe there are no, say no, this course has no assignments. That's totally fine. And so use this data, right? Download it, add it to the database, right? Save it to the database as assignments.json, and then in the index import it, and then implement the assignments. Enhance the assignments that you had implemented in prior prior assignments, right, and add the capability of being able to display that dynamically. All right. So same thing in the data-driven in the assignment editor. So the assignment editor, when you go to the assignment editor, the assignment name should change, right, depending on what assignment you're looking at, based on the name of the assignment, right? Now we don't have anything else like this description of the assignment or the due dates, any of that. That's not required, but at least the name of the assignment should change, right, when you navigate to the assignment editor, right? And again, that's on your own. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at now data-driven, the people screen. So right now, the people screen, right? If I go to the people, if we go to people, um, uh, it should contain, right, a table that displays the list of people that are in that course. Okay. Now, in the prior assignment in A2, right, in A2, we did give you a sample of that, right, implemented. So let's take a look at that, how that was implemented. So account screen, the people screen. So we gave you this implementation, right? So let's use this as a sample where to start. So let's create the table here. We'll probably need a directory. Yeah, let's create a directory here. Let's create that. This will be the entry point. So that's inside of the courses. We'll say new file, people table, and we'll grab that implementation. We'll paste it in there. There it is. And this has only one user, right? And we're going to display this when we navigate to that particular screen, right? So here, instead of hard coding people, we're going to bring in that people table. So people table. There we go. There it is, right? And right now we have Tony Stark. We have a placeholder for rendering a users here, right? And right now it's just one row, so it's a table, and it can and each user in this table represents, each row represents one user. And right now we only have one user, Tony Stark. Okay. So what this assignment asks you to do in assignment 3 is to take a data for users that we provide here of Tony Stark, Bruce Wayne, and iterate over this, right, and make that table dynamic, right? So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save it in users.json, okay, and also we're going to need to import that into our quote unquote database. So we'll go to our database, right, and make sure that we have the users in the database. Yeah, users. Let's import that. So we'll say import users from users, and let's add that to our database. Okay. Oops. Oh, there was some syntax. Okay, that got fixed. Okay. All right. So we have the users, but that's not enough, right? What we need also is that, if I navigate to one course, say I navigate to this course, RS101, it should show the users that are associated to that course. But if I navigate to a different course, RS102, and I go to people, this also should change, right? I should only see the people that are associated to that particular course. So for that, we're giving you an enrollments database, right? That is going to say that each user has their unique identifier, their primary key, right? So for instance, in users JSON, right? Notice that each user has a unique identifier, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. And so this additional information tells me, that so-and-so user is in this particular course, right? So in this case, we're saying that we have 5 users in RS101, and we have 4 users in RS102, okay? And that is going to be in the enrollments. So if we go to and implement enrollments here, so enrollments, and we copy and paste this content in here, we can now add it to our database as well. So let's go to database. Let's grab the enrollment. So import, enrollments from enrollments, and let's add it to our database, right? So now that I have the enrollments, what we can do is that the table, right? Again, based on the course ID, based on the users and the enrollments, we can filter out, right? Based on the enrollments, based on the users, we can kind of do a pattern match of which users are in what enrollment based on the current course, right? And only filter out and display the users for the particular course and the particular enrollments, right? So let's do that. Let's grab the use param so that we can parse out the course ID, right? And then from the database, we'll bring out the users and the enrollments, right? So let's do that in the course table and the people table. There we go. We can bring in the use params, right? And we can bring in the database, right? We can then parse out the ID of the course, right? And extract the users and enrollments from the database. And now this table, this row here, this is going to be inside of a map, right? That iterates over the users, right? So it's going to be right, a map over the users. So it's going to be, like that, right? This is going to be the result of a map and that iterates over the users. So for each user in the map, right, it's going to be like that, and then it's going to be map. So this will be users.map, and this is going to be an expression, right? An expression. So this iterates and displays all the users. Well, actually, it's just hard-coded here, right? And here we can display, instead of Tony, we can say, user dot first name. So there's Tony, Bruce, Natasha. They're all Stark. We can change the last name to be user dot last name. There we go, last name plus the ID, right? And the role. I think there's a role in there. So user dot role, I think. Right. Some of them are students. Some of them are faculty. Some of them are TAs. Right. But we don't want all the users, right? Not all of them. We want to filter out, right, based on the enrollments and the current course, right? So here's an example of how you could do that. We can create this filter, right, that uses two functions. One, so the filter, what it does is that it's iterating over each student or each user, and based on whether this returns true or false, right? So sum that it says I'm going to iterate over the enrollments, and for each enrollment, I'm going to take the enrollment, the user that has the ID of the user. I'm going to say, well, is it equal to the current user that I'm iterating over, right? Because I'm iterating over all the users, right? And so is that, am I looking at a user, that particular user for that ID? And also, is that particular enrollment, is that the course for that enrollment, is that equal to the course ID, the current course ID? If both things are true, are there that's what sum does, right? Are there any enrollments where this is true, right? That the current user matches the ID of the user that I'm iterating over, and also that the course is equal to the current course ID. If that's true, then return true. I want that user. Right? Otherwise, I don't want any users, right? So let's grab and copy this filter, right? And then just add it in between here, right here. We'll put the filter in there. Let's save that. Okay, notice that now for RS102, I only have Tony Stark, Bruce, Aragon, and Legolas. But now if I go to another course, RS101, I have and I go to people, notice that it's a different set. Tony Stark is in both places, right? He's enrolled in both. It's a faculty on both courses, right? And you have Bruce Wayne, Natasha, Thor, and Bruce. They're different users. Some of them are students, some of them are TAs, right? But some of them are shared. You can have different students that are going to the same course, right? That's fine. Or the same students going to multiple courses. That's totally fine. You can have multiple enrollments. Okay. So anyway, so you could see how you can display different content dynamically depending on the parameters, right, and your logic of filtering and mapping data across multiple data sets. Okay. Now, obviously, when we get to databases, these arrays are going to be tables or collections, and also these computations on finding matching of primary keys and foreign keys. That's going to be done in the database, right, or at least on the server, not on the user, right? So this all this logic eventually, right, it's going to move over into the server or database. But for now, this works pretty well. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's all I had for you today. Right. So we're going to commit all this to the branch, right? The A3 branch. Let's see, get branch. We are on branch A3, and I'm going to add everything. Let's see, we're going to say we worked on the canvas, and then assignment 3, right? So I'm going to add everything, going to commit, and I'm going to sync. So it's going to push everything to the branch A3, and you should have access to this through the Git repository. Okay.